welcome to the Why You're Wrong Fantasy Football Podcast. We're doing mid-rounds, studs and duds. I think we're on episode 20 or 21 at this point, Brian. So we have now hit the 20 episode mark. And as our typical intro, you are the fantasy force here. I am our monotone master. You can find us on social media at TikTok and Instagram as Why You're Wrong FFB, and also on Twitter as You're Wrong FFB. And so today's episode is really just focusing on those mid-rounds of mock drafts or your upcoming drafts. Rounds 5 through 9, where you're getting guys to really fill in your secondary positions and fill out your bench, basically trying to set up your team with guys that can help you win throughout the season. Anything you want to throw in, Brian?
Some would say that these guys are probably the most important part of your drafts because you could always draft those studs, but once you get later in the rounds, you can't go off those Madden rankings anymore. You got to actually do your research and know what to draft, so this should be interesting.
So, impactful news going around. All you really need to know is that Aaron Rodgers has still not showed up to Packers camp.
Probably will never show up to Packers camp, too.
And right now, since we're starting training camps, all the beat writers have to do is basically write articles on what went on in OTAs and their expectations for new players. So this is going to start the period where individual players are going to be all over the boards. No one's going to know where to rank them based on rumors and buzz. So you just have to be ready to basically tilt now in your mock drafts and being prepared for that when your real draft comes.
I mean, we still got, 6 weeks left?
Well, now it's officially, as of this recording, it's July 1st. So that means we are basically 4 weeks away from the start of preseason.
And then,
so 7 weeks away from kickoff.
Okay, I mean, I feel like within those 7 weeks, a lot's going to end up changing. So as time goes on, we're going to know about these changes. But these rankings right now are pretty good. But then again, some like Aaron Rodgers, things might happen.
Right.
Affect other players. So we'll see what happens.
And then we never hope for it. Knock on wood, it never happens. But a camp injury could, night and day, cause one guy to move up the rankings substantially.
Yeah, let's hope we don't draft and have an injury like that happen. Because I've seen it before. Someone drafted Jordy Nelson, and we were literally at the draft. And on TV, he tore his ACL within 5 seconds of him drafting him, and we wouldn't let him take it back. It was actually funny. The injury was not good. That was sad. But the pick was funny because it was just so ironic.
It was also everyone that drafted Andrew Luck, and then moments after he retired on TV.
Football. Yes, that is also dramatic.
That's why it's very important to have your draft either before the last preseason game or right after, where there's no more football left to be played. The rosters are set. Everyone's locked in. You're not going to have any weird wild cards right before your draft.
Yes, you need to wait till that last second because a lot can happen as the Jordy Nelson and Andrew Luck thing. Probably will happen this year too, so just beware.
All right, so mid-round studs and duds. So studs are your guys that are going to be safe. They have a guaranteed role. They have a history of past success. Duds are their big risks. They could bust. They might be being overdrafted due to a previous performance or just off-season hype, which seems to be an outlier for what they really are. We're focusing on the mid-rounds, as I said earlier. So those rounds 5 through 9, you're looking at guys who picks 50 to 112 or 110, depending on how many teams are in your league. So we're going to do this. We're going to start with off our studs, Brian. And I've kind of ranked them by order that they might show up in drafts. So first stud on the list is one of your guys, TJ Hawkinson.
Great guy.
51st overall at the moment, going as a tight end 4, finished last season as a tight end 5, averaging 6.8 points per game. I'll let you take it away.
What I didn't know is that I'm older than TJ Hawkinson, first of all. I knew he was young. I did not know I was older than him, which also just makes it that much better. I mean, I think TJ Hawkinson, I had him last year. He was a consistent 10 to 11 points for a tight end, which you don't see out of many tight ends other than Waller, Kelsey, and Kittle. But I think that he has a potential to probably be in that same spot again, probably in the 4 slot. And it's also better that there's actually no player on the Lions that they can throw to other than TJ Hawkinson. Jared Goff's not that bad, but I could see TJ Hawkinson getting 10 to 15 targets every single game. And they're going to be playing from behind too, so expect them to pass multiple times a game and go to TJ Hawkinson when they can. So I'm taking TJ Hawkinson as one of my studs in this round. You could take, a Waller, Kittle, Kelsey in the earlier rounds, but And when time goes on, if you're choosing between Mark Andrews and TJ Hawkinson, I'm leaning more towards TJ Hawkinson than Mark Andrews.
So I only have 2 counterpoints at the moment for TJ Hawkinson I just want to ask you about. So
Let's hear it.
as you mentioned, he has a downgrade in quarterback. He's going from Matthew Stafford to Jared Goff. When Jared Goff is the QB in LA, last season his tight end Tyler Higbee finished as the tight end 16 with only 5.6 points per game.
That's a good sign, though. I mean, with the weapons that they had, too, it's like they had, Cooper Kupp, they had Robert Woods, they had Gerald Everett, they had Cam Akers that came up. They were a big run-heavy offense, and yet Tyler Higbee was still up there. It was not even that great of a tight end, but still ended as a tight end 16. TJ Hawkinson's far and away better than Tyler Higbee, and they were also winning games in LA, and they're probably not going to be winning games in Detroit. So I'm a big game script person when it comes to it. I drafted Calvin Ridley last year because I knew the Falcons were going to be terrible. Julio Jones is going to get all the press coverage, and Calvin went off for a career record season. With TJ Hawkinson this season, I think the same thing. I think they're going to be very bad. No Kenny Galladay, no Marvin Jones. He's just going to get the rock all day.
So just like the one thing about it, so I feel like GameScript says he should have an insane amount of receptions this year.
Oh, yeah.
But like, what happens if he's literally the only thing that Detroit has, and the defense then focuses in on that stopping him? Or do you believe it's going to be a situation where he's not a big enough threat where defenses won't specifically target him, and he's just going to be in the middle of the field?
Well, you can't just put all your focus on a tight end, because if you put too much focus on a tight end, they're just going to burn you deep all day. It's like Jared Goff is still a pretty good quarterback. I mean, will the Lions suck? Yeah, the Lions are going to be probably one of the worst teams in the NFL other than the Texans. But I believe that TJ Hawkinson is going to be the most targeted tight end in the red zone out of any tight end in the entire league this season. And he'll probably catch 10-plus touchdowns. So I'm good with him getting like 3 catches for like 70 yards and a touchdown every game, because that's better than most tight ends you'll get out of anyone else.
Right, because like the big thing is like there's that threshold where it's like you want him to be high in receptions, but you also want him to be used in the red zone, and you want him to be on the field. You don't want a tight end who's constantly not on the field for run blocking. You don't want a tight end who's basically only a touchdown or bust kind of guy. You want that dude who's going to be a focal point of the offense. TJ Hawkinson is one of those tight ends this year that fits that role.
Yeah, I'm big on him this year, so if you can get him in a draft, take him, because he is going to do you well. I promise you that.
All right, my stud in round 5 is quarterback Dak Prescott, going as the 58th overall player off the board, QB4. So his season came to an end with an injury last year in week 5. Up until that week, he was the quarterback 1, Brian, averaging 31.3 points per game. That's more than Russell Wilson. That's more than Patrick Mahomes, Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers, and last year's QB1, that's more than Josh Allen. He's fully recovered and has a fantastic offense to work with. He has all the weapons you could possibly want. And the big bonus is that the defense is still a gigantic mess, which means they will have to score points to stay competitive in games. So I'm basically, if Dak Prescott is there in the 5th round, I want him on my team. The only real counterpoint I have to Dak Prescott is the fear that he might not rush as much, because once a quarterback has a significant injury, they're going to be more reluctant to rush. But the thing is, in those first 5 games, he didn't rush for more than 30 yards once. He would just vulture touchdowns, as he always does, from Zeke on the goal line.
I mean, he was on pace to literally shatter the passing yard record last season. I think CeeDee Lamb also. I've seen CeeDee Lamb in every single fantasy football. Like, get him, make sure you get him this season, because he's going to be amazing. I'm not like great on the hype, but I think that Dak Prescott has every single weapon possible to have one of the best seasons as a fantasy quarterback. He's going to be up there with the Josh Allens, the Lamar Jacksons, the Patrick Mahomes. Like, I'm all for drafting him. So if you can get him, I would definitely take him too.
I know you mentioned CeeDee Lamb, but I think one thing is for some reason, there's no hype around Amari Cooper. Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb are within like 3 picks of each other right now on mock drafts.
I mean, it's so tough to tell because Amari Cooper gets so much press coverage and CeeDee Lamb's the inside guy. And then you also got Michael Gallup too, who's low-key pretty good. Doesn't get as much targets as he should, but like still a pretty good player. Yeah. So he's got all the receivers possible. Way better than the Lions, for sure.
Oh, so much better.
I don't even know if I can name more than one receiver on the Lions. It's just kind of sad. But Michael Gallup, CeeDee Lamb, I mean, you got Zeke in the backfield to also catch passes, and you got Amari Cooper too. Like, and maybe the Blake Jarwin show comes back out. We'll see what happens there.
I think the
Dak's
problem,
get over 5,000 yards, 100%.
if he falls to someone, like late 5th round,
I'm taking him.
It's perfect.
I'm taking him.
It's basically 5th round, just like briefly talked about this point, is that's when it's like almost okay for you to take a high-end tight end or one of the high-end quarterbacks, because you need to make sure you at least have 2 and 2 or 3 and a good 1 for your running backs and wide receivers, because you need that depth. But like basically, if you take a quarterback or tight end and they're not the top of like cream of the top elite before round 5, you're just kind of losing out on the other talented players.
Yeah, I mean, I took Dalton Schultz, I think, as a pickup when Blake Jarwin went down. And I started him on a Monday Night Football game, which ended up winning me that week. And that was before Dak got hurt. So then I dropped him when Andy Dalton came in because no faith in Andy Dalton whatsoever. But Dalton Schultz was pretty good and was pretty effective. And I think that Blake Jarwin's 10 times better than Dalton Schultz, but still producing that offense. So if you can get Blake Jarwin late, I think he could be a sneaky flyer. But then again, you're probably not going to end up starting him. But if he does end up being a really good and a high-powered offense, it could be worth it. I think Dak is the reason why I would be taking him in that scenario.
Okay, fair. Our round 6 studs, Brian. You're off first. So the asterisk to this player is now starting to rise into round 5, depending on which mock draft system you're doing or which board you're looking at. But Kyle Pitts going right now on Fantasy Pros as the 61st overall player off the board as the tight end 6.
I'm a big fan of the Falcons, just solely, like I said before, game script. I think that the Falcons just score points, and they have just a horrific defense. And Matt Ryan's good. Like, give Matt Ryan credit. He was in the Super Bowl. Did he have the biggest choke ever in Super Bowl history? Yes, to the New England Patriots. Love those Pats fans out there. But Kyle Pitts he's projected to be one of the best tight end prospects maybe of all time. And that's just because he's so fast. He's big. He can go for every jump ball, and he didn't even drop a pass at all in college football last year, which is just insane. So I think in a high-powered offense, Calvin Ridley's probably going to get most of the targets there, but he's going to get a lot of coverage too. Russell Gage is going to be another big target this year too. And then who do you got in the middle? You got Kyle Pitts. Like, he can burn you for an 80-yard touchdown as a tight end. If you put linebackers on him, there's no way they're going to be able to cover him. I think Kyle Pitts is also up there with the T.J. Hawkinsons too. I would probably take Kyle Pitts over Mark Andrews too this season. I do like Mark Andrews, but I just don't believe in Lamar Jackson's passing. So I would target Kyle Pitts in this round if you don't already have a tight end. And he could honestly probably be the tight end 1 if he ends up catching a lot of touchdowns.
So the only real counterpoints to Kyle Pitts right now. So as we all know, top 5 pick, as you mentioned, pass-heavy offense, plays more like a wide receiver, dominated in college, but being drafted as the tight end 6 is the highest a tight end has ever finished during their rookie season, and that was Evan Ingram. Basically, tight end 6 is getting you 8.8 points per game and half-point PPR. So can he do better than Mike Gesicki?
Yes.
Can he do better than Logan Thomas?
I like Logan Thomas, so I can't speak on that. But yes, he could.
Could he be better than Rob Gronkowski?
Yes, 100%.
Okay, so now let me ask you this question, Brian.
Sure.
You're at the end of round 5. You have T.J. Hawkinson and Kyle Pitts both on the board. Who are you taking?
For safety, I'm taking T.J. Hawkinson. For the upside, I would take Kyle Pitts. I mean, if I had the decision, I would definitely take T.J. Hawkinson just for the sure. I had him last year. I know what to expect from him. I expect him to have a better season than I did last year. But I would not be upset if I took Kyle Pitts. That would be like I have a solid team. I'm trying to go and win the championship because Kyle Pitts could be that number 1 tight end this year. I know T.J. Hawkinson's got to be the 4th tight end ranked. He's going to be behind Waller, Kelsey, Kittle. But Kyle Pitts has the potential to either be like the 10th best tight end or number 1. So it's like it'd be a tough decision.
So my strategy, if I'm taking Kyle Pitts in the 5th round, that means I'm not taking an early round quarterback. That means I'm looking for a late round quarterback at that point. But if I'm taking Kyle Pitts, with one of my last 2 positional picks, I'm taking a Jared Cook. I'm taking a Blake Jarwin just as like a safety net, just in case Kyle Pitts gets off to a super slow start for whatever reason.
I don't think he will because Hayden Hurst had so much hype last year. Don't think Hayden Hurst is that great either. But again, with that offense, no Julio Jones now, Kyle Pitts will be a pretty solid tight end choice.
As he should be, with his draft pedigree.
We'll see.
So my round 6 stud, wide receiver for the Denver Broncos, Courtland Sutton, 73rd overall player right now, wide receiver 29. So he lost the entire last season to injury last year. He played in 1 game. He went for 3 for 66 against the Pittsburgh defense, which honestly pretty good when your quarterback is Drew Lock. In 2019, when Joe Flacco was his quarterback, he had 72 receptions, 1,100 yards, 6 touchdowns, finished as the wide receiver 19. That's 10 spots higher than where he's being drafted right now. So the thing is, Teddy Bridgewater is now his quarterback, which feels like an upgrade to Drew Lock, but Teddy Bridgewater gave DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson wide receiver 22 and 24 last season. So that's not wide receiver 1 numbers, but that's the hard part. So if the football gods could please gift the Broncos Aaron Rodgers or Deshaun Watson.
Or someone that's not Teddy Bridgewater.
Someone that's better than Teddy Bridgewater.
Yeah, Teddy Bridgewater's
be
good. He's okay. He's average.
It could be worse. It could be Drew Lock.
A little below average.
Yeah. So the real counterpoints to Courtland Sutton is that he's coming off injury and his current quarterback, either Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater, didn't supply a wide receiver 1. Do you still view Courtland Sutton as a great pick at this point, or are you a little hesitant on it?
I just don't like drafting Denver Bronco players
okay.
to begin with. I do think Courtland Sutton is good, and he puts up those numbers when he is healthy. I just do not like drafting Denver Broncos players, and this is a tip for everyone. Just don't do it because you're going to be upset. However, if you are going to draft a Denver Bronco player, it probably will be Courtland Sutton. So I'll leave you at that.
I just want to ask you, does this have anything to do last year with your loss because of Tim Patrick's 40-yard end of game
It might.
catch?
It really might be. I just don't like that offense. I just don't feel good with a Denver Bronco player on my team. But Courtland Sutton is good. If you can have him as like a wide receiver 2, if you go like RB heavy off the jump, then you're in a pretty good shape. And I think he'll probably go for like 1,000 yards, like 9 touchdowns, which is pretty good. So
Aaron Rodgers goes to the Denver Broncos, which you want a Bronco wide receiver.
Yes, and I want a Broncos wide receiver. But Teddy Bridgewater is like the double glove thing. It throws me off.
Okay.
I still don't like that.
All right, enter our round 7 studs, Brian. We're starting this one off with your guy, Damian Harris, going as the 72nd overall off the board, running back 32, which means he is now listed as the 32nd out of 32nd potential running backs in the NFL.
Strong RB2 choice right there. Damian Harris. The Pats are they went from Tom Brady to Cam Newton, so now we are a heavy run team. And I think that Damian Harris is going to be an absolute stud. I mean, he was already a stud last year, and I think he only gets better this year. And again, all fantasy experts are all saying Damian Harris is going to have a breakout year, and I totally expect it. I mean, think about LeGarrette Blount when he was on our team. What did he do? He had like 17 rushing touchdowns in one season. That was with Tom Brady. We didn't run the ball as much, but we always have been like a run-heavy team. I think that with the additions of like Jonas Smith and Hunter Henry on both ends of the line, I think they're going to be a pretty versatile reason to be running the ball a little bit more, open a little bit more gaps. We lost, Rex Burkhead too, so there's not as many good running backs in the backfield. And I just saw in the news over here on Fantasy Pros that Damian Harris is the clear-cut one, which he should be anyways. But I think you can be safe to say that if you draft him as your RB2, you should not be upset about that.
So I just feel like Damian Harris needs more context around him to just build a better picture so people can kind of understand like why he's here in drafts and why people have him ranked so high or so low. So I feel like the situation is last year he finished as the running back 50. Mainly because he lost the first 4 weeks due to injury and got injured at the end of the season. Mm-hmm. During the weeks where he was healthy and playing, weeks 4 through 14, he was the running back 27. The other counterpoints against him was that the Pats re-signed James White. They drafted Ramondre Stevenson. For some reason, Sonny Michel's still on the roster. And Cam Newton loves to vulture rushing touchdowns at the goal line. And also, he doesn't catch the ball. He's not a pass. That's really rough.
That's what hurts, because he's not a third down back. That's like the only flaw of Damian Harris.
But that being said, if the Patriots' quarterback position is an actual real competition in camp, and they move to Mac Jones, that means there's no more vulturing rushing touchdowns at the goal line.
Correct.
Which means the 12 rushing touchdowns Cam Newton last year? Those may now go to Damian Harris if there's that many opportunities again.
Correct. I also think, game script, we're talking game script again, if you're an Atlanta Falcon fan or you're an Atlanta Falcon fans player, you're passing the ball a lot, you're down. New England Patriots, we're going to be up there in the standings, of course. So when we're a good football team, we're going to be winning a lot of games. Second half of the football game, you're going to be running a lot, trying to kill the clock. Damien Harris is going to come in there. He probably will be that guy, 20 carries a game, 100 yards rushing, hopefully a touchdown. But I think that we put up a lot of points this season because his offense is pretty good, but we're also very run heavy. Only problem is, like you said, not a third down back. Could get vultured by Cam Newton. Mac Jones comes in. He's a high-end RB1, RB2 at that point, so feel safe taking him.
Right. If before the season starts, his draft position doesn't move, but right before a draft, they say Mac Jones is the official starter, I want Damien Harris as a guy on my team.
I like Damien Harris over like people like Leonard Fournette. Like that's like another I'd probably like consider it like taking Damien Harris because I think he has a little bit more of an edge on Leonard Fournette, even though Fournette's higher in rankings. But I don't know. I'm also biased from a Patriots fan, so.
So this is actually where we get into our first kind of official disagreement on a player.
Let's hear it.
We were talking about a stud for round 8. For me, I picked James Conner as a stud for round 8. You picked him as a dud. So I just kind of want to set the context for the situation because I understand where you're coming from. I just feel like this really depends on how your individual draft is going, where you view James Conner as a part of a fantasy team. So James Conner is going as the 83rd overall player off the board, running back 35. So it feels gross to say because this is a very reluctant pick because you took the guy I wanted to talk about, who we're going to talk about next. So I was stuck between Juju Smith-Schuster and Deebo Samuel's other options, and I was just like, I'll talk about James Conner right now. In this round, he really just feels like the pretzels of the mixed chip bag, where there's no more Doritos, there's no more Lay's, all there's left is pretzels, and you have to eat it. So last year, he finished as the running back 26, averaging 11.3 points per game in the games he played. In my opinion, he's technically the last starting running back on the board at this point. So in the context, if you've not drafted an RB2 for some reason at this point, or if you're looking, I really want an RB3 that's an actual starter right now in the NFL, James Conner is the last stop on the bus. So the thing is, he's going to be in a high-powered Cardinals offense. The Cardinals have signed Rodney Hudson, which means rushing up the middle, as Cliff Kingsbury likes to do, is going to be a lot easier. And the thing is, this is really just, it's going to build up because I have this guy as a dud that I'm going to talk about a little bit more later. But Chase Edmonds has had one carry inside the 5 his entire career, which means James Conner is going to be the goal line back for a high-powered offense.
He's taken over the Kenyon Drake role. I get it. James Conner was good on the Steelers for one season. He had a good offensive line to support it. Last year, people drafted James Conner way too high, and what happened? Disappointed, sad faces.
Super disappointed.
And probably didn't make the playoffs because he drafted James Conner way too early. Steelers were not that great of a team. Yes, Cardinals are a way better team, but I just see with his injury history.
Right. That is one of my big counterpoints. He's very injury prone.
He's very injury prone. I would probably guess that he's going to get injured at some point in the season, and Chase Edmonds will probably end up taking over. And once that happens, he comes back from injury. They don't know what to do. They might do a 50-50 carry split. Chase Edmonds might just pass the ball all day because they got AJ Green now. They got DeAndre. They got Larry Fitz. They got all the weapons ahead of them to be a high-powered offense for passing. So, yes, James Conner could get the touchdowns, but the injuries is concerning. And at the same time, I think they pass the ball way more because Kyler Murray, runs the ball way too much. So he takes a lot of goal line carries too. So you got to put that into perspective as well. For me, I just feel like James Conner's season this year is going to feel like David Johnson last year, where you could plug him in, he might get you a touchdown, but you're gonna look at the score at the end of the game, and he's gonna have between 8 to 10 points. You could also see an 18 carries, 63 yards, no touchdowns. You have 6.3 points at that point, and he's not the passing down. He's not going to get passing down plays. It's going to be all Chase Edmonds. He'll probably get less than 50 catches, I'm going to assume. And that's 50 is a lot. And I'm assuming that he'll probably get some, maybe 30-ish, but Chase Edmonds will be the passing guy, so you have to rely on his touchdowns. He's that Kenyon Drake from last year. Kenyon Drake wasn't terrible last year, again, but James Conner, I was so disappointed in him last year. I just don't think he's that good of a running back anymore.
He's not. He's definitely not the guy from a few years ago.
You're not that guy.
No. And the thing is, I don't want to draft James Conner. This is really, he's the only reason why he's kind of a stud at this point is if he's the last guy on the bus. Like if you don't have a running back and you really desperately need one for your team, you have to take. He's a desperate RB3 with RB2 upside if he doesn't get hurt.
Well, the next running backs to take after that is Kenyon Drake and Zach Moss. So feel comfortable taking James Conner. Don't feel great about it. Feel comfortable.
Right. Compared to those two.
So compared to those two, feel comfortable. Don't feel great.
So now we're going to talk about the guy that you stole from me to talk about this round. Robbie Anderson, 84th overall right now, going as the wide receiver 33. Finished last year as the wide receiver 24, averaging 11 points per game.
Well, I think I already talked about this in a previous podcast. I mean, the number one reason why I think Robbie Anderson's going to be so good is, one, you got a healthy Christian McCaffrey. Two, well, that's not the number one reason, but another reason would be that Christian McCaffrey is fully healthy this season. A lot of attention's thrown on the run game, which is going to open up the passing game. That's one point. Two, Sam Darnold's the quarterback now. They've had a heavy connection when they were on the Jets together. They weren't good on the Jets, but Robbie Anderson was a pretty solid fantasy player when he was over there. And I think that Sam Darnold might have a little bit of edge on Teddy Bridgewater, and Robbie Anderson was actually better than DJ Moore last year. So expect Robbie Anderson to take all the touchdowns in the red zone. I think he's going to be highly targeted. He's quick, he's fast, he gets a lot of receptions, and he was very good last season too. Towards like the end of the season, he kind of fell apart a little bit. But I think if he puts together a whole season,
he was Mr. Consistent in receptions last year.
Yeah, because the first 8 to 10 weeks, he was very good. He was a top 15 wide receiver in the league. And then he kind of fell off towards the end of the season. McCaffrey got hurt. They were putting a lot of pressure on the pass game. I think that kind of, affected DJ Moore and Robbie Anderson. But then again, DJ Moore has big games. Robbie Anderson has big games. But I'd expect Robbie Anderson to overperform of where he's being drafted in drafts. And I think that you could probably take him with full confidence.
Oh, easily. So the only few counterpoints I have is when Sam Darnold was his quarterback in New York, Robbie Anderson finished as the wide receiver 38. Last year, Sam Darnold finished as a quarterback 30, averaging only 12 points per game as a quarterback in the games he played, which is just terrible. But could all because of Adam Gase.
Fair.
It has been proven that once a player leaves the grasp of Adam Gase, they become fantasy relevant again.
I would like to see, I don't know, but I'm going to expect that Robbie Anderson, from when he entered the league to where he is now, he has jumped his ADP year after year after year after year, and he's only getting better and better, so why not take a chance on him? Exactly. He's going to be good. He's going to catch a lot of touchdowns. He's going to catch a lot of yards. He's fast. He's that guy who can catch a 99-yard touchdown and completely shift your game. I'm all for Robbie Anderson.
So another stud, round 8 guy, Michael Carter. Running back, 38 off the board at the moment, 94th overall. So it's hard to really predict what he's going to do right now because he's a rookie running back, drafted by the Jets in round 4, considered one of the top 5 backs in the draft. He's surrounded by mediocre running back talent. This is Tevin Coleman, Josh Adams, Ty Johnson. So there's a good chance Michael Carter takes over. And the common theme is rookie running backs after the bye week, if they're drafted early, that's when they really take the reins from the starter. So that's a week 6 for the Jets. So you're looking at a week 7, Michael Carter could become fully relevant. If he takes over, the worst he could do is running back 32, which is still 6 spots higher than where he's being drafted. He feels like the Antonio Gibson of this year, if that's fair to say.
Yeah, I think that his fantasy relevance is all related to, are the Jets going to be good or good enough? Because, again, game script is such a huge part of fantasy. I don't know with all that heavy backfield. I don't know if they're losing by 30, they throw Michael Carter up there. They might go with a Tevin Coleman for the rest of the game and just be like, I don't want Carter to get hurt. We're down 30, let's throw in Tevin Coleman. I feel like you're going to see that way more often than not. I think he has all the talent in the world to be a great running back. If he was on the Bucks, probably be one of the best running backs in the league. But it's just because he's on the Jets is what worries me.
Right. My biggest counterpoint is he plays for the Jets.
I mean, that's literally the only counterpoint you have. He has all the talent. He could be very good, but he plays for the Jets.
I feel like the hope is that now that Adam Gase has been removed from the Jets, they're a much better team overall.
Yes.
But that being I think
they're better than the Lions.
Yes, better than the Lions. The best case scenario is that Michael Carter ends up between the 15 to 20 range for running backs, which means if you're taking him at the end of the 8th or beginning of the 9th round, as a guy you throw into your lineup because one of your starting running backs has been hurt, he could produce enough where he keeps your team afloat.
Yeah, and I mean, Jets running backs have never really been that bad. Like Frank Gore didn't have that bad of a season last year, and Frank Gore's like 95 years old. So you put in Michael Carter is like actually a really good running back, and you put him into that offense with Zach Wilson. I mean, I'd take a chance on him just because of his hype, and I just don't know what we're going to expect from the Jets this season.
The preseason is going to tell us a lot.
Exactly.
So round 9 stud. Now this guy is now going as early as round 8 in drafts now, just because of preseason hype, buzz around camp. But a guy I picked was Devonta Smith, 104th overall right now, going off the board as the wide receiver 41. It's the Heisman Trophy winner. It's a first round pick, and the team traded up for him. He's easily the best wide receiver on the team, and the Eagles will probably be playing from behind a lot, which means they're going to be passing a ton. So I feel like Devonta Smith, he's great as going to be like your guy on your bench that once he starts to really break out, you can have confidence putting him into your lineup.
It's a slim reaper. I think the only flaw that he has is that he's too small and he's not big enough for the NFL. But can you tell me an Alabama player that was a stud at Alabama that came into the league that wasn't good? I mean, Derrick Henry, Julio Jones, Calvin Ridley. I mean, there's a whole list that just keeps going on. Jerry Jeudy. There's so many of them. I can't even who else we got? I mean, you want to throw Kenny Drake in there, I guess.
You know what?
He was pretty good.
One of the best
Damian Harris.
counterpoints to him being too small for the NFL isn't the best wide receiver in the NFL also really small right now?
It's true. Tyreek Hill.
Tyreek Hill isn't a big guy.
Small. I mean, I think that, the connection between Hurts and Devonta Smith, I think that it's going to be huge for him just because they already know how to play together. And I think that, again, game script's going to be huge because Jalen Hurts can sling the ball. We know that. We saw it from last year. And I think that Smith going into that team, he has the potential to catch 10 plus touchdowns. I mean, the man won the Heisman as a receiver. That never happens. So he has all the talent in the world. But I definitely feel confident in drafting him. So I'd put him as a stud too if I had the choice.
It's definitely one of those things where it's going to be a wait and see kind of thing, but it's a wait and see where I'm going to keep him on my bench and see what happens. And best case scenario, he becomes a wide receiver 1. Worst case scenario, he's a flex play.
He's the Travis Fulgham of last year, but he has so much more talent than Travis Fulgham. So expect more than what Travis Fulgham did, and he's going to catch a lot more touchdowns and not have that dud in between. So he'll be the number 1 receiver on that team for sure.
A stud that you have around 9, Brian, is Jarvis Landry. He's going as the 105th overall player off the board, wide receiver 41. Finished last year as a wide receiver 36, averaged 10.1 points per game. Yep. I'll let you go for it now because it's your guy, and I
think Jarvis should change his name legally to Jarvis wide receiver 3 Landry because he is I hate drafting him. I'm not a big Jarvis guy, but every time I play him, the dude just catches touchdowns and always gets 8 balls for 80 yards every single game. And I don't know why. I cannot explain it. Baker Mayfield's good. The Browns are supposed to be a Super Bowl team this year. I think that Jarvis just gets the production. He has done it consistently year after year after year and has never really had a bad season. And he's always been in that wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4 range. So we're getting down in the draft, so it's kind of hard to choose these studs at this point. But if you did have to take someone, Jarvis is a very good safety wide receiver to take. You shouldn't feel bad taking Jarvis Landry because he could either get you 20, but at worst, he'll probably get you 8, which isn't even that bad. So I'd like Jarvis.
As a flex play, you can't be upset if it's the guy this late in the draft if he's getting you 8 points. So last year you had 5 games over 10, one of them being a 20-point game. And everything else was kind of just man, I wish I didn't play
It's just
Jarvis.
Consistent 8 to 10,
yeah,
which isn't bad. It's not there's guys out there that get 2 points. So you could plug Jarvis in and he's not going to dud. He's going to get that 6 balls, 63 yards, and it's he's more reliant on the touchdowns. If he does get the touchdown, then clearly it's going to be a lot better than that. But he's always in that 8 to I'd say 13 range every week.
So the real only counterpoints Jarvis Landry right now is as you meant Jarvis wide receiver 3 Landry because he's behind Odell Beckham and they're in a super run heavy offense which focuses on their 2 prime running backs and great offensive line. So I feel they really only throw the ball when they're not in a position to run it for 3 or 4 yards. So that's just the one drawback, but throwing him into your lineup this late in the drafts, he's definitely a wide receiver 3 at best with wide receiver 2 upside. He's a great pick this late if you just want to stock up on wide receiver depth.
And he's also super talented too. Man makes one-handed catches like it's nothing. So
that's what's the hardest part is like he's talented.
It's Baker Mayfield. Let's put it towards Baker Mayfield. Give him a good quarterback. I bet you Jarvis is one of the best receivers in the league, but Baker's just not. Jarvis makes Baker look good. Let's just put it there.
So now we're getting into our dud segment, Brian. So round 5, a dud in the middle of the round is Travis Etienne. 55th overall, running back 25 right now. And it's hard because Travis Etienne, first round rookie draft pick, played with Trevor Lawrence in college, who is now his NFL college quarterback. He was considered the second best running back in the draft. But to me, he's a dud because James Robinson is still there. The Jags coaches have stated that Etienne will be the third down back, and James Robinson is going to be the 1 and 2 down back. James Robinson is going a round and a half later than him in drafts, and he finished as the running back 7 last year. Taking Travis Etienne in the 5th round, there's too much risk for him not being the ultimate clear number 1 back right now to take him.
Yeah, it's just way too risky. I mean, James Robinson literally broke records as a rookie last season, and now they bring in Travis Etienne, which is the most questionable draft pick of all time. I get it. Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne connection, great, awesome. But why is he ranked as the 55th ranked player when he's going to be a third down back? Like, might as well throw Giovanni Bernard up there because the Bucs are so good.
Right.
He's going to be the third down back too. Like, why are we not giving Giovanni Bernard hype? Like, Jacksonville is supposed to be ranked one of the worst teams this year. So I don't understand the hype either. I would have put him as a dud too. It's just too risky.
I think you're taking Travis Etienne because you believe that Travis Etienne will take over the full workload, which is a possibility. But with the way the Jags are handling that situation right now, yeah, that might happen, but could be week 15 when the season's over.
Yeah, it's just I'd feel more comfortable taking James Robinson in this case because James Robinson is good. We know what to expect from him. Do we know what to expect from Travis Etienne? He has that comparison to Alvin Kamara, which I kind of see because he's shifty and fast, but there's just too much going on in that backfield. I don't want any part of it.
I don't want either player on my team, but James Robinson, 7th round, greater sign, Travis Etienne, 5th round.
I won't be drafting them, so if you can avoid them at all costs, just do it.
This is where we get into another slight disagreement, Brian. A round 5 dud that you have is Kenny Golladay, and I hyped him up as a round 4 stud last week. Now, Kenny Golladay has now fallen in the rankings since I made that remark. I don't know why, but I'm sure there's got to be a reason out there. So now he's the 57th overall wide receiver. 57th overall player off the board. Wide receiver 23. Missed the majority of last year due to injury, but in the games he played, averaged 11.2 points per game. In 2019, he's the wide receiver 6, averaging 13.5 points per game. He was the highest paid wide receiver in free agency for a reason. He's going to have to get the ball because they paid him to get the ball. Why don't you like Kenny Golladay this season, Brian?
Let's put this. 1, Daniel Jones.
Fair.
Not even going to explain, just Daniel Jones.
That's the biggest counterpoint against him?
1 is Daniel Jones. 2. Have you ever had Golden Tate or Sterling Shepard on your fantasy team, and have you ever felt good having Golden Tate and Sterling Shepard as your receivers in fantasy?
No and no.
No, you do not. I think Kenny Golladay has all the talent in the world. He's a beast. Had him last year. Disappointed me because he got hurt, didn't even play. We're going to put that aside us. I'm a little salty about that still.
The past is the past.
The past is the past. But I just do not think Daniel Jones is good enough to have Kenny Golladay be that wide receiver 2 that people are going to be drafting him as. I think Kenny Golladay has all the talent in the world, yes, but I just like seeing people take Sterling Shepard year after year. Like, he's always been that guy to get like 8 catches, like 60 yards. Like Evan Ingram, another guy, like, should be this amazing tight end stud, and what happens? He's not even that good. It's like it's all revolving around Daniel Jones. I don't think Daniel Jones has it. I think the Giants are just a terrible football team. I think they're going to just push Kenny Golladay into the ground. It sucks because he has so much talent, but he could prove me wrong. I mean, he is a stud. Maybe Daniel Jones, like the best quarterback in the league next year, just completely proves me wrong. But for this case, I'm going to avoid Kenny Golladay just because I just do not believe in that football team.
And that's a fair point for me. If you're in the 5th round, you're looking for a wide receiver 2, or maybe you went wide receiver heavy and he's a wide receiver 3. He's one of the few guys at this point who has proven that he can be a top 10, the top 6 wide receiver. This is, as you mentioned, as I also mentioned earlier, Daniel Jones is such a huge downgrade for Matthew Stafford.
It's crazy. Like, people don't appreciate how good Matthew Stafford is, and it's like going from Matthew Stafford to Daniel Jones is such a crazy downfall. It's like people will realize when they draft Kenny Galladay expecting this amazingness, and it's like once Daniel Jones throws like a 10 yards interception over his head, you're gonna be like, damn, like, well, I guess I probably shouldn't have drafted Kenny Galladay.
All right. A dud that I have in round 6, Brian. Mentioned his name earlier. Chase Edmonds. 61st overall off the board, going as the running back 26. Finished last year as the running back 28, while playing second fiddle to Kenny and Drake. Averaged 8.8 points per game. Very talented pass-catching back. This is why I think he's a dud. We kind of had this discussion earlier with James Conner, but the Cardinals signed James Conner in the offseason, who's currently an 8th round pick. The team doesn't trust Chase Edmonds to be a 3-down back the entire season. When the team could have basically had David Johnson walking around the backfield, they didn't give it over to Chase Edmonds. They then traded for Kenyon Drake because they didn't trust Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds now had the opportunity going into the season to be the guy, and the team went out and signed James Conner.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, he has had one carry within the 5-yard line his entire career. Basically, you're drafting Chase Edmonds in round 6, hoping that a misfortunate injury to James Conner forces him to that starting role. If that doesn't happen, or for some reason the Cardinals pick up someone else because they don't trust Chase Edmonds, as they've proven over the past few years, you're drafting a backup running back in round 6, which is not what you want to be doing.
It's crazy because I agree with everything that you just said. We already talked about it anyways, but he is actually a bigger dud than the other person that I would have chose, which is Melvin Gordon. And I think Melvin Gordon is better than Chase Edmonds, which is saying something about how big of a dud that Chase Edmonds actually is. Yeah. And I think that with the James Conner signing, like, he's just not going to get the same work as it was. But whenever Chase Edmonds is the number one guy in that backfield, Yahoo was like, oh my God, RB1, like, lock him in, could be the number one running back this year. Like the number one running back this week. Like, everyone loves Chase Edmonds because he's fast, he's shifty, he can catch the ball. He's a PPR machine.
He had that one game where he scored 3 touchdowns versus the Giants. One week David Johnson was out, and that's all people can remember.
That's literally all they can remember. But it's just not like you cannot trust Chase Edmonds as like your low end, back end RB2 because with James Conner there, it's too much to expect. He's just, I can't even like put it into words. Just Chase Edmonds is too risky. He's up there with Travis Etienne, like him and the James Conner, Chase Edmonds, and then you got the James Robinson and Travis Etienne. It's like the same scenario. It's like, don't feel good about drafting Chase Edmonds because he's not going to do what you expect.
It's like James Conner in the 8th for me is also a greater sign than Chase Edmonds in the 6th, even though if I'm drafting, I don't want both of my team. But if I had to choose one, it'd be James Conner in the 8th.
I agree.
All right, Brian, you just mentioned his name, but your dud for round 6 is Melvin Gordon, going as the 63rd overall player off the board, running back 27. So he did finish last year as the running back 13, averaging 12.2 points per game. And they also released Philip Lindsay. But I'll let you start off with why he's a dud.
Denver Bronco player, 1. 2, I think Melvin Gordon's days are past him. And 3, I think that he's one of the, if not the most injury-prone running back out there. That man gets injured like no other, but it's never like severe injuries. Like, I had him 3 years ago when he was on the Chargers and he led me to a championship. Amazing. Nasty. I don't think Melvin Gordon's that same guy. He's had a lot of knee injury problems in the past. I think that the Broncos are losing, if not every game, which is going to force them to pass the ball a lot. I know they got a pretty big backfield now over in the Broncos, and they love to use every single one of their running backs. It's just how the Broncos have always been. It's like, if they win games, Melvin Gordon will do good. If they don't win games, Melvin Gordon's going to play bad just because of game script. I think the Broncos are not that good. Maybe win 4 games, 5 games this year. So that's leaving 12 other games to be just terrible. So I wouldn't feel good about it. I feel better about Melvin Gordon than Chase Edmonds. But again, I'd rather draft someone like Damian Harris to be my RB2 or like Fournette to be my RB2 instead of Melvin Gordon because I just have no faith in him.
So here are some other things. Remember when he got arrested last year?
He did get arrested last year.
He's also, as you mentioned, he's getting older. Do you know who was in his draft class?
Who?
Todd Gurley.
Todd Gurley is also a free agent.
Yes, exactly. And also, I think the only reason Melvin Gordon is still on the team because they paid him to be on the team for 2 years. So they're just like, you know what?
He'll be a free agent.
Yeah, he's by far going to be a free agent. The team is just being like, we'll just keep him on the roster because we have to pay him anyway.
Yeah.
And they also drafted Javonte Williams in the second round, who's being compared to be similar to the next Nick Chubb-style player. You don't take a running back like that in the second round to just have him sit on the bench the entire year.
Exactly.
The moment Melvin Gordon slips up once or shows that he's slow, gets hurt, his job is done for the season.
Oh, yeah.
It's good. They're going to hand it right to Javonte.
I think they hand it to him within week 2 or 3. They might even start him off as an RB1 to begin with. Melvin Gordon's years are over. Do not feel good about drafting him. Ask Chris. He drafted him last year. What happened? Not a good running back. Was on his bench for most of the season, honestly. So that's all I'm going to leave it at. Not a big Melvin Gordon fan either way. So
we're going to start off our round 7 with another pick from you, Brian. Chase Claypool going as the 77th overall player off the board, wide receiver 31. Finished last year as a wide receiver 19, averaging 11.5 points per game. Why does he suck?
I mean, it's the Steelers. They're projected to be like one of the worst teams this year. I think Big Ben just doesn't have it. Probably should have retired. I don't know why he didn't retire last year because he should have done it. But there's just too many mouths to feed on that offense, and he's the third guy in that offense. Juju's better. Deontay Johnson is the best by far. I mean, they still have Eric Ebron there. Like, there's just so many pieces that go into it, and you can't expect to put Chase Claypool in your lineup week after week and expect him to put up those 35-point games that he did for like the first 4 weeks of the season. Like, he was a stud. Like, oh my God, Claypool caught 4 touchdowns. Oh my God, Claypool caught 2 touchdowns. And what happened? As the season went on, started to fall off. I think you should start to expect more of that for this season because of the consistency level. And it's just a huge risk to be able to take him. I'm not a big Chase Claypool fan. Some people are, but I don't buy it.
So, like, the points you mentioned, I completely agree with. I just also want to throw in that he needs Big Ben to be able to throw the ball deep because that's what he's the deep ball guy. Big Ben does not have the arm anymore. Big Ben basically couldn't throw past more than 20 yards last year. So everything is in the Juju or Deontay Johnson range for passes, while all of the targets to Chase Claypool are inaccurate and he has to basically compete for all of them. They're not easy catches.
Yeah, I mean, as a stud, Deontay Johnson, great pick. Take Deontay Johnson with confidence. I think he's going to be a freaking monster. That dude just is a target machine. Like, he just week after week just catches 10 balls. Like, he is so good. Chase Claypool, not the same caliber player. Don't feel good drafting him. If you draft him, you might get lucky, put him in your lineup, you might get like 30 points, but expect the 5 to 6 range from Chase Claypool every week.
Here's also another very important red flag to consider. The Steelers have the hardest schedule in the NFL going into the season. They also have the worst offensive line in the NFL going into the season. If you're a deep threat player,
you need time.
If your quarterback has to throw the ball within 2 seconds, you're not getting more than 20 yards downfield at best.
But Big Ben's mobile, so he can get out of the pocket really easily. Right?
Really easily?
Yeah.
Okay.
He might be the slowest quarterback in the league, so I just avoid Chase Claypool. That's all I gotta say.
My round 7 dud is that I know it's a guy you also don't like, so you're going to enjoy tearing him apart. Zach Moss, 85th overall, running back 36. He finished last year as the running back 45, averaging 7.3 points per game. He's a very bruising running back, but he's so slow.
So slow.
And he's a dud because he shares the backfield with Devin Singletary, who's the much faster pass-catching back. The most rushing attempts he had in one game last year, Zach Moss, 14. In 9 games last year, he had less than 10 rushing attempts.
Just when you think he's going to score a touchdown, Josh Allen rips your heart out.
Exactly.
Read option and just takes it himself. And he's also Zach Fumble Moss forever, so
right.
He fumbles way too much.
Zach Moss is only used to basically run the clock out and just hope he doesn't fumble. Like, that's his world. It's like, you think he's going to get that goal line work, and then Josh Allen just jumps over the pile.
And I love it. That's why I had Josh Allen last year. Amazing quarterback. Take Josh Allen with confidence, too, a quarterback. Zach Moss, probably one of the worst starting running backs in the entire league.
I feel like we don't need to talk about him anymore. So moving on to round 8 dud. I don't know how to feel about this. I feel like he's basically a dud because you just hate his quarterback, but Will Fuller, Brian, 91st overall, wide receiver 37. He was the wide receiver 5 last year until he got busted for PEDs, averaging 14.8 points per game. Why do you hate Will Fuller this year?
I don't hate Will Fuller. I do like him. I think he's a talented quarterback. Was very good with Deshaun Watson. Had him last year. Steroid Will Fuller, nasty. No more steroids for Will Fuller. Might see a little bit of a little bit of downgrade here.
Okay.
I mean, they have Devontae Parker. They got Gaskin. They got Kasecki. They got a lot of targets there too, which is also kind of concerning. I'm not gonna say I'm gonna sit here and say that Will Fuller's gonna be bad. Like, you could take Will Fuller and he might be good. I just don't think you're gonna expect Will Fuller from last season. And again, I just hate Tua, and I think he's one of the worst passing quarterbacks in the entire NFL. So put that into perspective that he doesn't have Deshaun Watson anymore. He has Tua Tagovailoa, who is not a good quarterback. When Tua's out of the league in 3 years, I'm gonna be like, I told you so. So just wait for it. Trust me.
Okay. I can't wait to bring this back in 3 years and be like,
he's like an MVP. And
yeah.
I'm like, God damn it. Will Fuller's had the best season of his career, and I'm just like, okay. But yeah, I'm not all aboard of Will Fuller this season.
That's fair. Moving on to another dud. Kenyon Drake, 92nd overall off the board, going as a running back 37. Finished last year as a running back 14, averaging 12 points per game. Signed by Las Vegas Raiders to be the number 2 back. So he's behind Josh Jacobs. I don't think he's going to get enough reps, and he won't be efficient enough to start. If he's in your starting lineup, it's because either Josh Jacobs has been sidelined or because you're in a really bad place fantasy-wise. The Raiders have lost 3 important members of the offensive line as well. Why are you drafting Kenyon Drake at all in fantasy?
There's just nothing to be said. Just don't draft him. Well, I mean, I guess you could take him because he likes fantasy players.
Yeah.
He did tweet that he would win you a fantasy championship and lied. First of all, but he cares.
So he tried his best.
Josh Jacobs it said that he wasn't playing in a fantasy playoff week and played that day. So that is just it's like, I care. Like, if you're going to care for the fantasy season, then I'll respect you a little bit. Do I feel good about drafting you? No. I mean, he's going to be terrible. He's just not fantasy relevant, maybe an RB4 at best. You're really hoping him as a handcuff to Josh Jacobs if he goes down. But again, I'm not big on Josh Jacobs either, just because of his tweet.
It's fair. I feel like you either love Josh Jacobs because he helped you win in a pouring week, or you hate him because he summoned your season and you can't depend on him anymore.
Goes down at the 5-yard line, that type of stuff.
And then you're like, oh, he should get one more carry, get that 4-yard touchdown.
Nope.
Then it's, Darren Waller touchdown.
Darren Waller, yep. Just avoid Kenyon Drake. Just not there this season.
So moving into our last round of today's podcast, the round 9 duds. Really the handcuff running back round right now in a 12-team league. You picked Devin Singletary. We just talked about Zach Moss as a dud. I guess both running backs are duds. He's 106th overall, running back 42. Finished last year as running back 34, averaged 7.8 points per game. Why does Devin Singletary also suck, Ryan?
He's behind Zach Moss, who was our biggest dud, and I said that he was the worst starting running back in the league. So what does that make Devin Singletary?
Even worse?
When has Devin Singletary been a good fantasy running back?
Like a 5-game stretch his rookie year.
Maybe, if that. Why is Devin Singletary even being drafted higher than an RB6 at this point? He is that guy that gets dropped he's drafted, and then he's dropped year after year after year because he's so bad. He gets 6 carries a game, and he's oh, Devin Singletary, 6 carries, -2 yards, and you're like, great, awesome.
You pick him up thinking oh, he's got a great matchup, and
he was good. No, he was good the first Josh Allen year. He was pretty solid.
I feel like if Devin Singletary was on a different team, we'd have a different outlook on him. It's just with the way the Bills use their running backs, you don't love either option.
He's that pass catching back, but Josh Allen literally just throws the ball to Stephon Diggs 950 times a game. There's no room for Devin Singletary to be any part of that offense. Do not feel good about drafting Devin Singletary. If you draft him, sure, he's going to be on your bench the entire season. Probably will never see your starting lineup ever. And if he is, then you're probably not making the playoffs.
Another round 9 dud is Nyheim Hines. 110th overall right now, running back 45. Now, to a lot of people, this might be a question mark because last year he finished as a running back 20, averaging 10.1 points per game. He's the Colts pass catching back, but this is why he's a dud. Phillip Rivers is gone, who just force-fed him receptions every game. The team seems to really be going in the direction of featuring Jonathan Taylor. I know you're super skeptical of Jonathan Taylor, Brian.
You will not see me with Jonathan Taylor on my football team.
But that's the way it's looking. Their quarterback is Carson Wentz. Their head coach is Frank Wright, who everyone was like, oh, he's reunited with Carson Wentz, who basically gave Carson Wentz an MVP caliber season until he got hurt. During that MVP caliber season, Brian, Carson Wentz still didn't dump the ball off. He's known to take sacks, throw picks, or incompletions instead of just the easy dump off to the running back. During that MVP season, the running backs only averaged 4.5 targets per game. So at best, you're looking at 4 catches a game if the running back catches everything. So let's call that nothing.
Yeah, he's just not going to be relevant in fantasy. He's that guy, again, that you can pick up and he could drop like 35 in one game, just like randomly, like catches like 200 receiving yards. You're like, where did that come from? But then again, he did have Phillip Rivers, who has the arm strength of a little child, and all he could do was dump it off to Nyheim Hines. Now you got Carson Wentz, who loves to run around the pocket, look for his receiver 50 yards downfield, and throw an interception. I do have to say, Jonathan Taylor going higher in the rankings is making me a little bit more skeptical about drafting him. I will still not draft him just because that backfield's so loaded. But John Taylor would probably be one of the worst RB1s in that first round taken. And Nyheim Hines probably won't even see the field because they love Jonathan Taylor. So,
how low would Jonathan Taylor have to fall for you to take him, Brian?
It would have to be like after like the 8th running back taken, like 9. He's like going as like the 5th running back right now. I would much rather have like a Nick Chubb, Alvin Kamara over Jonathan Taylor. And if you take Jonathan Taylor over Nick Chubb or Alvin Kamara, I don't know if I could even talk to you.
Jonathan Taylor, so right now in most mock drafts, just because that's a quick sidetrack before we end the episode, it's going the first 8 running backs in a row.
Yeah.
So if he's going to be the 8th running back you take, would you rather Jonathan Taylor or going with Tyreek Hill?
Tyreek Hill.
Jonathan Taylor or Travis Kelce?
That's a tough one. I would have to think about that.
Yeah,
I would have to lean towards Jonathan Taylor, but not feel good about it.
Yeah. Because Travis Kelce basically is 2 tight ends in one with the amount of points you get.
You can get Travis Kelce. You might be able to get Travis Kelce on the back end there. That's what I would hope for. Because RBs are so bad this year that you need those RB studs, and like I don't want to draft John Taylor, but if I had to, then I would take him. But that's okay. I hope I don't get put in that scenario.
Okay, now let me throw this at you because given the guys we're talking about, this could be a combination you have. Would you rather Travis Kelce and Damian Harris or Jonathan Taylor and TJ Hawkinson?
Well, I mean, I would take Jonathan Taylor and TJ Hawkinson. I feel like Damian Harris is so low between all those caliber players that like I would definitely take Jonathan Taylor and who was the other one?
TJ Hawkinson together.
TJ Hawkinson, yeah.
Okay, so let me try to make it a little bit more difficult.
It's not very balanced. Like, can't feel good about having Damian Harris and Travis Kelce, and I'd rather have the 2 pretty good guys.
Well, in theory, this is like, so we're basically looking at, you got a wide receiver, tight end 1, running back 2, or running back 1 and tight end 4 or 5.
Like David Montgomery and...
But you hate David Montgomery.
I know. So like David Montgomery and Travis Kelce or TJ Hawkinson and Jonathan Taylor. Like, I don't like David Montgomery, but I feel better about David Montgomery and Travis Kelce than I do about Jonathan Taylor and TJ Hawkinson. Let's just put it there.
Interesting. All right, but
that's just a hate.
It's just a hate. So wrapping up the show, bonus tip: write a pros and cons list for each player. Nothing super in depth, but enough where like you can make a decision on the tail on if you want them on your team or not. Follow us on social media. Keep track of the news. Don't read into coach speak. There's going to be a lot of that going on over the next few weeks. And mock draft. I mean, even though players are going to be all the way up and down, off the board, higher, lower, going to be moving all the time. The more mock drafts you do anyway will still help you figure out, like, do you believe that buzz? And if you do believe it, how does your team get structured? Do you have any last remarks, Brian?
I'm good. I'm just not drafting Jonathan Taylor this year.
It's a good end point. For our next episode, that's to be determined. I'd like to do a 3-person mock draft, but we'll see if we can get a 3rd person with us. So see everyone else next time.